Hey there, listeners. Thanks for stopping by to the podcast today. Please, before you're done listening to this episode, leave us a review. If you're on Spotify, you can review now, and you can also review on Apple Podcasts. But if there's any platforms that I'm forgetting about and you can leave us a review, please do so. If you're happening to watch us on YouTube, and if you don't know, you can watch these podcasts on YouTube now, please like and subscribe to the channel and share the episode as well. So thanks for stopping by, everybody, and enjoy the episode.
Stay hungry, stay foolish.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
I have a dream. Will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Hello and welcome back to the Knowledge is Power podcast. I'm your host, Max Willett, and today we got another great guest on for you. So if you could go ahead and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hey, Max, and welcome to all your viewers. This is Mike Stenhouse. I'm a Cranston native and had the fortune of some really great family, really great opportunities in my life. Grew up in Cranston, went to Harvard, played Major League Baseball, and now I'm involved in public policy. One of the few conservatives here in this very blue state of Rhode Island, but we're a public policy think tank. I'm the CEO and founder. It's been 12 years now, and we're trying to improve public policy so that it better serves the people of the state. But I've got a wonderful family, and I've had some really great professional experiences, and I look forward to sharing some of that with you and your audience.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time out of your day to talk to me, and I really look forward to this. So basically, like I asked all my guests, is if you could just tell us your life story, that would be great. I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
That's a long one. That's
okay. Wait, I got time.
How far back you want to go?
As far as you want.
Well, I was actually born in Pueblo, Colorado. So that's really cool on the one hand. But on the other hand, I can't say I was born and raised in Rhode Island. But I was certainly raised in Rhode Island. My dad was at the time playing minor league baseball. My dad ended up being a all-star pitcher for the old Washington Senators after graduating from URI. But in 1958, he was playing ball for a Pueblo, Colorado team. And that's where I was born. And I only spent a few months there, that summer before coming to Rhode Island. But I will say this, I think my dad's next start, he was away when I was born. He was on a road trip. And his next start, a few days later, he pitched a no-hitter. So that's the great inspiration I was in his life, Max. Grew up in Rhode Island, went to a great public high school, Cranston East, and here in Cranston, Rhode Island, was lucky enough to play baseball and basketball and get good enough grades to get into Harvard, where I became an All-American baseball player, was drafted out of there. I was an economics major there. I'll go through it quickly and then we can dig in wherever you would like more. I played, how many years? 8 years of professional baseball, parts of 5 years in the major leagues with the Expos who drafted me, the Expos, the Twins, and even 1986 with the Red Sox. In fact, I got my Red Sox ring here. Let's see if I can put it up to the camera from the 1986 American League Championship team. I was, that year I spent half the time in Pawtucket and a third of the season in Boston. Didn't get a lot of playing time, but I was on the team, and Bill Buckner and Clemens and Boggs, all those guys were my friends and still are. God bless Buckner's soul, by the way, who we lost a few years ago. And then after that, I did a bunch of different things, entrepreneurial things, which I know was one of the things. I mean, I didn't have a lot of money and a lot of risk I could take, but I did do some startup ventures and have largely been working for myself since then. I did have a short stint with Staples, a Fortune 500, maybe even 100 company. That was a great experience. I was with one of the first major .com companies back in 2000 and 2001. That was a great experience. And some other small business ventures. But for, like I said, for the past 12 years, I've been involved in public policy. On my family side, I've got two great boys in their 30s from my first marriage, and one great third son from my second marriage who's in his mid-30s. My parents are still alive. I've been blessed, and that's where I am right now.
Very cool. I forgot to mention in the beginning of the podcast, before anybody, messages me, I did have your brother on the podcast, Dave. It was a great episode. I think that was, oh gosh, a few months ago now, but
he's a character.
Yep. That was a great episode, and enjoyed talking to him, but excuse me, first brother duo that we've had on the podcast. So,
all right. Yeah. The Sten men, as we call ourselves.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So, as you know, we talked about a little bit about this, but I love baseball. It's the greatest sport on the face of the planet, in my opinion. And I know that's very controversial. Red Sox suck right now, but what more can you ask for?
I'm tired of these first to last things. I got to tell you that, Max.
Oh my gosh, it happens all the time. It's ridiculous, but yeah. So, if you want, I'd love to hear a little bit more in detail of your baseball and sports career to begin with. So let's start off, like in high school, were you a multi-sport athlete?
Yes, I was. My dad, just like my dad played varsity basketball and at University of Rhode Island. In fact, up until recently, he was still one of the top 20 scorers of all time at URI. But I think a few players have eclipsed him since then. And then he went on to be a professional pitcher. So because of my dad, I had great instruction and incentive to follow those two sports. So, yeah, so I was actually a 3-time All-State baseball player in high school, and I was also a second-team All-State basketball player. And then when I went to Harvard, I became an All-American baseball player there, but I did play 2 years of basketball at Harvard as well. But first year, a freshman could only play freshman. So I played a freshman season on the freshman team. And then my sophomore year, I played a year of varsity. Then I decided to focus on baseball after that. So, yeah, it was a great experience to play two sports. In fact, I encourage young kids, with all the AAU and all the specialization, they really try to get you pigeonholed. Play multiple sports. It's better for you as a youngster to learn those other skills, helps your body develop, helps your hand-eye coordination develop. Don't just focus on one sport. Not only do you get burned out, but I think you lose physical development. I think playing multiple sports makes you a better athlete, period. And then you'll have time to focus on your primary sport when you get to maybe high school or college. But as a young person, if your parents allow you to, and if it can be done safely, play as many sports as you can.
Absolutely. And do you think that is that lost, or do you think that's still going on with a lot of current athletes?
Well, I think the focus, the big time money behind these AAU teams and the sponsors behind them, the students who we see it, you're a graduate of the Rhode Island Baseball Institute, that's the instructional baseball school in Warwick, Rhode Island for young kids. I think it's age 8 through high school, and we've seen that. I used to instruct there, and my brother was one of the founders. My dad actually was the founder, and my brother is now along with John Mello. And we see that. Kids are now at a young age are really being pressured to when they join an AAU team. One of the conditions in many of them is you can't play any other sports. We've got a year-round program. We'll play games in the fall, talking baseball, and doesn't leave you time. In fact, they prohibit you from playing all the sports. Even in high school, a lot of coaches are saying, hey, if you're going to play football for me, for instance, I don't want you playing any other sport. I think that's wrong. I think it's narrow-minded. And I do think, listen, that's true for the elite athletes, right? For the athletes who have a chance to go on to have maybe a college scholarship or something like that. They're the ones who are being focused into a single sport. And I just don't like it. I understand from a business perspective, but being young and being an athlete is not about business at that age. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think it's always good to have opportunities to play AAU at a young age. And I think Ribby and the Bandits are one of the few programs that actually encourages kids to go play other sports because, I know I coached a team this summer and
I had no issue with it. I definitely encourage. I still think baseball is better than those other sports, but I think it's necessary because it will make you a better athlete and a better baseball
Well,
player.
there's no
More
question for me.
well-rounded.
Playing basketball got me in top physical condition. I mean, coming every year coming out of my basketball season. I mean, everybody else was just starting to get their bodies in shape, if you would, and I was already there. So clearly it was a huge help for me to play basketball in the winter and early spring.
So I'm curious to hear, like, so obviously you played in the minors and the major leagues. At what point, like when you were in high school or college, did you realize, holy crap, I might actually have a shot to get to the minors and beyond?
Well, I think the possibility became real for me my senior year in high school when I hit something like 580. Um,
Wow.
um, and the scouts were there. And my dad, of course, being a former big leaguer, being a former coach, he coached 10 years at Rhode Island College, 10 years at Brown University. So he not only did he play with many of the scouts, but many of those scouts were scouting his players, right? So he knew the scouts in the area, and they were obviously there watching me. And by the time the pre-draft came in June, I had already been accepted to Harvard University. So scouts would come to rather. So I had the advantage of having an intermediary, my dad, and the scouts would talk to him and say, "Look, we're very interested in drafting your son. We think he's got potential." And he said, "Well, look, don't even waste your time. He's been accepted to Harvard unless you're going to offer him enormous amounts of money." Back then, like $100,000 was a hell of a lot of money in 1976. So unless you're offering him six figures, don't even think about drafting him because we've talked about it. And he's going to go get the Harvard degree, which probably, would be nice to have as a backup in case his baseball career doesn't unfold. So I didn't get drafted in my out of high school because he told the scouts, that was the condition. But at the same time, it also proved to us that that I did have that potential, and then that solidified further my freshman year when I hit 480. Believe it or not, 483 as a freshman in Division I baseball at Harvard. I was second in the whole country in batting. So I had to wait till my junior year. So at that point, we knew I was on that path. I still to this day would have hoped it had turned out a little better than it did. But you asked when we kind of knew. That's when we kind of knew.
And did it affect like your confidence level at all? Like did it make you want to play better, or did you feel like satisfied where you were at?
Well, no, I think, having that carrot out there of being drafted and playing pro ball was always a dream of mine for sure. So while I was always working towards that end, the media make too much of, always really ramped up for this game or how depressing it could be after that loss. Athletes don't think that way when you're in the heat of the moment.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a real athlete with the proper mindset, you're every at bat, every game, you're playing your ass off to win, no matter what else is going on around you, no matter what the long-term prospects or lack of prospects are. That's just the way it is. I mean, it could be a game of tiddlywinks. I'm going to do everything I can to win that goddamn game. So that's just the way athletes are. That's what I was. When you get into a game, and in basketball, that's why I love basketball. In basketball, you could kind of let your inner aggression out more. Because you're running around. It's a high energy sport. You're always either on offense, defense, or transition or something in basketball, right? In baseball, you got to wait your turn, and I didn't like waiting my turn so much. But yeah. So I don't think it altered my outlook at all because I was always that way.
Yeah, well, that's interesting to hear. And so let's hear, what was it like in the minor leagues when you were, still developing and eventually what was it like getting into the major leagues?
Well, there's a reason that you don't see high school and college players get drafted and go right to the big leagues like you do in every other sport. In football, high school, you saw it with LeBron James, in basketball, right out of high school and instantly a star in the NBA. You see it often in college and in every sport. It can't happen in baseball. It's just too much of a learning curve. It's why it's the greatest game in the world, because it's the most difficult game in the world to play. It doesn't look it. It looks very relaxed out there, but the skills that you constantly have to learn from high school and college through the minor leagues, and then to be a consistent performer at the major league, it's astounding. You put a college team, you put any college player directly in the big leagues, they get wiped out. But in every other sport, they could instantly be a star. So, so I appreciated the minor league process. I learned so much. You need to be lucky to get good coaches. In the minor leagues, I had good coaches, but we can talk about this later, Max. But when I got to the big leagues is when I had the worst coaches I ever had, as far as technical teaching. The worst coaches I ever had. Destructive coaches. Wow. I had when I got to the major leagues. Felipe Alou, who was my AAA manager, one of the great Alou brothers out of the Dominican Republic, along with his brothers Jesus and Matty, who all played in the 60s and 70s, was really the greatest influence on me as a hitter, more mentally as much as physically. So I really appreciated the minor league development. It's a grind. I was lucky that I had a little bonus money. I was drafted, I had a little bonus money. But your first year in pro ball, you make $600 a month for only the 5 months that you play. And you see, and it doesn't go up unless you're really on a fast path. It doesn't go up much higher for others. And, I want to circle back to my comment about Harvard University going there. I remember a call midway through my first year when I was playing with the Expos in Single A in West Palm Beach, Florida. And we had a good friend of mine had just been released. He signed out of high school, reasonably smart guy, but you could just see he wasn't, but he had been playing 4 or 5 years in like A ball or below and hadn't even progressed past that. He was married. His wife was smart. They had a child. Both of them didn't go to college because they wanted to pursue the baseball career. So here he is now at age 23 with a child. No money because baseball didn't pay anything. He was from a small, I forget, southern town somewhere. And they release him. And now him and his wife have zero prospects for, I don't know what happened to him. But he was crying, and I called my dad, like, what am I doing here? And he goes, well, you don't forget, same thing could happen to you, but at least you got the Harvard background, to fall back on. And it did prove to help me. But think about that. Think about in chasing that dream, the number of people, players, and their spouses. I mean, many of these spouses are really sharp. They all gave it all up to chase the dream, both of them. And then after, you could be, a lot of people play 5, 6, 7, 8 years of minor league ball, then get cut. You might make a little more money, but nothing you could save or ever buy a house with or anything like that. And then it's gone. Then it's over, and you literally got to rebuild your life starting from zero. So, one thing I want to say, I don't know if you've seen any of the news, but there is an effort to unionize minor league players. And while in my business, I'm not a big fan of public unions by any public employee, by any stretch of the imagination. And I am a little suspicious of some private unions. If any group of professionals in this country still needs to be unionized, it's minor league baseball, because they are treated like crap. They have no benefits. They only get paid for the 5 months they're playing ball. They don't get paid for going to spring training. They don't get paid for any fall ball or off season, club sponsored stuff. They are completely taken advantage of. And I fully support the effort to unionize minor league players. It's a grind.
Yeah. Interesting to hear, because you hear a lot of mixed things about that minor league union. And I mean, you hear a lot of mixed things about the major league union as well, because of all the issues that were between the owners. And
well, unions can definitely get out of hand. You're right.
Yeah. But it's interesting to hear you say that, because Yeah, I didn't really know how to feel about what was going on in Major League Baseball earlier this year with the delay of the season, and I think it's good that most people have kind of forgotten that that's even happened, with the great season of baseball that we've had in the big leagues with Aaron Judge and Albert Pujols, reaching monumental, historical levels of play. It's incredible to watch, but I'm kind of glad that people have forgotten about that because it was sort of staining the game and drowning people out of it. Excuse me. So,
Well,
but
there's just so much money involved in baseball. I mean,
yeah.
look, on the one hand, what player is worth that much money? But on the other hand, owners and teams, are bringing in revenues, 10, 20, 50 times. So you could also say what owner should be making that much money, so
Hmm.
there is some justification to sharing the wealth, but when it gets to the point to where it's shutting down the game and hurting the game, I think that's where the unions go too far. They're extremely well off. They're among the wealthiest people in the country. And let's not be spoiled brats about it. On the one hand, yeah, negotiate, make your public case, but let's not shut down the game.
Yeah. What do you think of the new rule changes coming next year? I know we're getting a little technical about baseball, but I like talking about what I like talking about. So
Yeah, sure. So do I. I'm mixed. There's the traditional purity of the game side of me that says let them play the game. But you do have to remember, for the integrity of the game. But we do have to remember this is a fans' sport, and it's not about more important than the integrity of the game. It has to be the business of the game.
Mhm.
And the rules changes, I think, are designed to make the game more fan friendly, both from speeding up the game with the pitch clock and from because these data driven shifts have certainly cut down on offense.
Mhm.
And offense is what people go see. I mean, everybody appreciates a well-pitched game here and there and all that, but it's not really over the long course of a season what people want to see. So I understand and I accept the rules changes, even if there's a big part of me that that says, yeah, I wish we didn't have to do it that way. The thing I'm not even clear on yet, and I haven't even looked into, is what is the enforcement of the pitch clock? And
Yeah.
I make a very strong line there. We should not be screwing around with the actual game stats, like issuing a ball, issuing a strike. No, that's screwing around at that level. Hit them where it counts in the pocketbook. If a
Mm.
player delays the game, fine them after the game, but don't screw around with the integrity of the game on the field that way. I don't
Yeah.
even know what the prescription or enforcement mechanism is. I haven't even seen that yet, but I absolutely think you ought to make it a fine and not something that destroys the balls, strikes, and otherwise integrity of the game.
Absolutely. I mean, I absolutely despise a pitch clock. I think baseball is the only sport that has no time. It can go for a very long time as a lot of games have, but in that case, I hate the runner on second base and extra innings rule
Yeah, I don't like that either. That one I want to
because
do away with. I'm okay with the pitch clock because it's getting ridiculous. Some of these pitchers,
yeah,
it's ridiculous. They're killing viewership. They're killing it. The
yeah.
the man on second base, that's just a union thing. Oh, we don't want guys to play too many extra innings because they might get hurt. Oh, give me a break.
I think like 80% of games, extra inning games, end in the 10th inning anyways. So like that rule totally destroyed like their argument about the games taking too long is like 80% of them end in the 10th inning anyway. So it's only one extra inning.
I mean, there is nothing more exciting than extra innings. Bottom of the ninth,
Hmm.
the possibility for a walk off at any moment. That's when the game actually gets exciting.
Hmm.
So having the extra innings, I think, is fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think is the biggest difference between when you were playing in the game and now in modern day baseball?
Um, just the statistics,
Yeah.
the emphasis on data. It's ruined the game, and not ruined, but it's harmed the game in this regard. A manager, back when I played, Good friend of mine. Still, I saw him at a Red Sox game. Sat with him. Former Red Sox manager Joe Morgan. We all remember Morgan's magic, whatever year that was when he took over the team. What year was that? 1990. I don't even know what year that was. 88. I don't even know. But a great guy. But he managed on instincts. Now, statistics are just one more factor to use. A player's history against that pitcher, or a left-right split or something like that. That's just one more piece of information for a manager to make a decision. But the media now positions it as a rule.
Mm.
No, it doesn't matter to the media, I'm saying it doesn't matter if, and media pressure, unfortunately, is, believe it or not, media pressure is driving decisions made on the baseball field. Because they would say, well, look, you should, this is the statistics say you should have brought in a lefty to face that hitter. And it backfired and you lost the game because of it. And you're a bad manager. And then all of a sudden they're calling for him to be resigned by being a Neanderthal Yahoo or something like that. But there's so many other factors beyond the statistics. So today the managers are going beyond their instincts. Their instincts are, all right, how well is that pitcher throwing the ball? How well is the guy I'm thinking of bringing in throwing a wall? How well is that hitter swinging the bat? What's the wind conditions? All kinds of factors, including statistics, should play into that decision. But it shouldn't be solely based on decision. But managers are now fearful, just like politicians are fearful to go against the media narrative or the government's narrative or something like that. Managers are the same way, and that's not the way baseball. The beauty of baseball is the pastoral green fields and the instincts and the mano a mano stuff, with the bat, with the bat and the ball, the pitcher, the batter, and all that. So in that regard, I think that is a terror. I mean, it's automatic now. You can predict what's going to happen, right? You know what's going to happen. The lefty comes up. Well, I got to bring in the lefty pitcher, or else I'm going to get crucified in the media, and that's just wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean I really like the movie Moneyball because I just think it's a good movie, and I love sort of like the story of how the Athletics became really good that year and how they built a team of a bunch of nobodies and they became something. But looking back on what it did to the game, I kind of dislike it. And I think that guy, the head scout who was in the movie and I think was actually a scout for the Athletics or something in real life, talked about how he still despises Billy Beane for what he did to the game of baseball. He said he ruined baseball. I think his name was like Grady something. I can't remember.
Grady Little?
No, that because that was a Red Sox.
What's the argument there now?
Moneyball. You ever see
what's the argument? How did he supposedly ruin baseball?
Because of how the book that was written by Bill James, wasn't it, about all statistics and everything like that. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, yeah, but that's a very different than what I'm talking about. I actually think Moneyball was the proper way of thinking. When it comes to acquiring players, you do have to look at their histories and their long-term goals. And I've always felt that, in fact, this is a whole nother story. I actually got a patent on a software program. And believe it or not, ESPN told me it's not going to work because this internet thing you're talking about, that's just going to be a fad and go away. I developed an internet-based software program to evaluate player performance, pitchers and batters. And it was big. And I've even joked to my friends, I think Moneyball copied me because baseball didn't appreciate the value of patient hitters who didn't strike out a lot, who got on base a lot, even if their average might not have been high, even if they didn't hit a lot of home runs. And to me, that's really all that Moneyball was, is how to properly evaluate the value of a player to your team. It's not an in-game situational tool, but when you're looking at what kind of players can we draft, what kind of players, in Oakland's case with Billy Beane, what kind of players can we get the most value for our money with, because they didn't have a lot of money over there. I thought that was absolutely the proper way to use statistics to make those long-term decisions. So, my thing was called Stats, named it after myself. And I still think it's the best player evaluation tool. I just don't have the time. You talk about entrepreneurship. That's one thing I regret, Max.
Okay.
I wish I didn't invest more in it, because I'd be a zillionaire right now. For all the fantasy leagues, and I had Dan Duquette like it. I had Peter Gammons like it. I went to ESPN because I had some contacts there, and they said, "Oh, no, this internet thing's." This was like 1999, 1998. They said, "No, this internet thing's not going to be anything." Can you believe that? So I was way ahead of my time with that. But so I'm gonna object with whoever that person was who says that Moneyball was bad for the game.
Very interesting. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just hard for me not to like the movie just because it is a really good movie and
Yeah,
it's a
it is.
baseball movie, you know? But yeah, so let's sort of flip topics. You had sort of mentioned this a couple times, but let's go into your entrepreneurial career and talk a little bit about how, what businesses you are involved with. And it says online you were involved with Fortune 500 company, like you had mentioned in the intro, an executive with a .com company, and an IT services franchise. So if you want to go into a little bit more detail about those three things, that'd be great.
Yeah, I don't know that I would categorize myself as a true entrepreneur. I did have some small business startups,
Mm-hmm.
but a true entrepreneur would put significant percentages of their wealth or income at risk in order to chase down a business goal. I never did that in any significant way. I did have a number of startup businesses when I got done playing ball. I had a sports event management company where I took advantage of my relationships with players, and I would run corporate events, featuring players. I even ran fantasy camps. I ran for 3 years the Montreal Expos fantasy camp. I did the Red Sox fantasy camp for 1 year, corporate fantasy camps. So while it was a startup, it wasn't like I put my what little wealth I had at high risk. But I never really earned much. I did invest in a you mentioned the IT services company. When I was working for after the .com company, another company I went to, I was traveling everywhere. I was doing sales for, when they say we're going to go check the tape or we're going to look at the video, video coaching, you go back and everybody's pretty much aware of it now. But every pitch, every at bat, every jump shot in basketball is logged and analyzed. You can go back, you can search out. Let me see all 3-1 pitches that I hit for a ground ball at a shortstop with 1 out against the Houston Astros, and just like that, you can pull that up. So pitch batters and pitchers and coaches use this all the time. Well, I sold that equipment to both Major League Baseball teams and to NBA teams back in like 2000, 2004, 5, 6, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
3 maybe even, yeah, and maybe even as early as 2003. And I was traveling all over the country. I had a visit. Yeah, I had 58 teams were my clients, and I was traveling everywhere. My kids were just starting to play Little League Baseball. Gosh, I don't want to miss all their games. I was also doing some, so I decided to invest in a franchise where I could just stay home. I gave up a really nice income. I never cared about money that much. I never made much money playing ball. And I was making a really good income with that digital video company, but not at the expense of missing my kids, growing up and sports career. So I said, I just need something where I can stay in Rhode Island. So I invested. I knew nothing about informational technology and computer services, but I bought a franchise. I hired people who did know about that. And again, it didn't work out so well, but it sustained me for those critical years of my kids playing ball. And then I got into this public policy stuff around 2010, and I've been doing that since. So I fulfilled my goal, my family goal. A lot of people, Max, and I know it's a little digression from your entrepreneur question, but I just had I had a reunion with my roommates just a few weeks ago, and they asked me, Sten, do you ever regret that you didn't stay in baseball as a coach or as a front office manager? My roommate, Terry Francona, is going to go in the Red Sox Hall of Fame for breaking the curse, right? And he's still a great manager with Cleveland. There's no doubt I could have had that same path. Many other friends of mine are in the front office. Frank Wren was a general manager, assistant at the Red Sox, head general manager with the Atlanta Braves. No doubt I could have had that path. But again, that wasn't the life I wanted for my family, because that's a very rocky road. You know, every time there's a new general manager, all the coaches get fired, all the staff gets fired, and you're at the mercy of, you know, one day you're in Atlanta, one year, next year in California, next year you could be, you know, in Cincinnati. I don't want that for my family. I wanted, you know, I grew up in a stable family here in Rhode Island. It's the greatest thing that ever happened to me, and I hope that by sacrificing fame and money, that my kids are better off for it, and I believe they are. And so I have been a small business owner. I consider my nonprofit, my public policy nonprofit, sort of a small business venture, even though it is a nonprofit. But I've been able to stay in this one for 12 years, and we have some very generous donors. It's risky, you know, when you're you know, because you know, my small business experience was never designed. You know, an entrepreneur invests a lot, puts a lot at risk, and the reward can be equally as high, right? You know, if you're a true entrepreneur, a software developer, or something like that, or a new product, you literally could make millions, right? That was never my goal. My goal was to not put a lot at risk and not look for a lot in return other than a nice, steady income. But like I said, the one thing I wish I had come back on, the only regret I have in life, is not pushing my stats patent in software a little bit more. Max, you're a young guy. It still could make you some money. So let me know if you want to be a partner in that with me. I'll give you half the company, all right? Just for the sake of it, all right? For your sweat and equity. So there's an offer I want you to think about.
All right. How about we'll do a
how often do you get an offer like that on your show?
We'll do an electronic handshake.
Okay, deal. If you want to learn about it, let me know.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. So that's some pretty cool stuff. I had no clue about that stats. That's pretty interesting to hear. But yeah, so now I think we should get into, well, actually, before we get into that, let's talk about, you know, your college career a little bit, and sort of your view on college, because obviously you said you'd gone to Harvard, and you know, there's a lot of controversy around college and how to pay for it and whatever, but that's not where we might get into that later. But what's your opinion on the value of a college education now over, you know, getting maybe a trade or something like that?
Well, I think it's an all of the above thing. Look, many colleges are priced so high, and again, I won't get into it, but I'll just make the statement: it's because of poor federal policy with all these grants that go to colleges, and I mean to students, and loans. Colleges are able, you know, even this Joe Biden college forgiveness program, if it survives, is going to dramatically raise the cost of colleges, because colleges know, hey, somebody's going to subsidize it, right? And so we can charge as much as we want. So colleges, I think, have gotten out of control. The prices are out of control, and it is legitimate to question whether or not all that debt or all that money you pay to go to college, whether you actually can earn, whether there's an equal or greater benefit coming out on the backside after you graduate. That is a legitimate question. But in many cases, colleges, if you want to be a doctor, you know, if you want to be a lawyer, you know, you have to do that. I think worthless degrees and paying big money, I don't mean worthless, but you know what I mean, with degrees that don't specifically train you for something, I think you're at high risk. We always promote trades. I mean, it's the trades that make the country go. You know, plumbing, you know, cars, you know, whatever it is. There's all kinds of trades out there. Lumber, you know, we need this stuff, and we don't need college trained people for that. We need skilled professionals. And there's no, you know, the thing I don't like is how they try to put shame upon those industries and those lines of work. You know, that's where Mike Rowe comes in so great.
Absolutely.
Was it dirty jobs, he calls it?
Yeah.
You know, that's been such a great eye opener for so many people. He actually spoke. I heard him speak at a national conference that I belong to, and he was just terrific. And those are the jobs that really make the country go. Computer technicians and whatnot. So It's an all of the above approach. I think there's no shame in anything, just like there's no shame in a mom or a dad deciding to stay at home and raise the kids.
Hmm.
One of my roommates is a Mr. Mom, right? There's no shame in any of that. This idea that this snobbish elitist idea that you have to go to college and you have to work, put your family secondary. I don't agree with that at all. I love the trades. They're the soul of this nation. They make it go. But again, I don't want to downplay colleges. Yes, they're getting very expensive. College, if you're an athlete,
Hmm.
college baseball, like we just said, is very much like a minor leagues. In many sports. So it's no other nation has a college athletic program like we have.
Because all a lot of other nations, it's free to go to college, so they can't really afford to have
Yeah,
programs like that.
Totally different model. So
Yep.
so it's all of the above. Back when I went to college, it was very different. Harvard was expensive for my parents, but I'll give you, it was like $7,500 a year. What's
Wow.
70,000 now or something like that.
Yeah.
And my parents had to
Wow.
struggle to pay most of that. They let me pay much of the last loan after I got out of baseball, but that was a struggle for my parents to do, and they did the same for my brother at Holy Cross.
Mhm.
But that's okay. I had scholarships to go to Providence College and Amherst College. I had full rides there, and we sat down with my parents, and they said, "Don't let money be a factor. You go where you want to go and play ball where you want to play ball and study where you want to play ball." So I chose Harvard, and my parents were generous enough to fund that for me through a loan they got. So of course, you don't get any scholarships in Ivy League. They're not allowed to give out athletic scholarships, and the only financial aid we qualified for was a kind of a low interest loan.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting to hear, sort of how the price of college has increased so much. And it hasn't, I mean, it's increased just like everything else has because of inflation over the years, but it's also exponentially risen in price. Sort of like
That's
how
because
cars
of bad federal
have.
policy. Very bad federal policy has caused that.
Yeah, it just it's interesting to see how that happens, compared to other things. A bottle of water might have cost 50 cents and now it costs $1. It's like, well, it's now comparing something that costs $7,500 to $70,000.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to see something like that just totally get blown out of the water and get so expensive. And then if you go and turn and then make college quote unquote free, it sort of just devalues it even more. What's the point of buying a Ferrari if everybody gets one? What's the point of getting a college education if everybody can get one for free? Part of the getting into a loan is getting out on the other side and working hard to pay it off.
Yeah, and then you're exactly right, Max. And then there's two other factors. There's the admissions policies that sometimes even my alma mater has been accused of it, and I think is being sued for it, which is with racial quotas and whatnot. Dead wrong. The most quality, just like any line of business. That's what's the beauty of sports. It's I don't you're never going to see an unqualified person really make it to the big league because you can't. You either can perform or you can't, and you either have the grades to get in college, you can, but we know that in business, we know that in government, especially, people get promoted even despite a massive track record of failure because for whatever politically correct reason, that's a person they want to promote. And the same thing happens a lot with college entries and admissions, and that's wrong. And then you add to that, and again, I don't want to get too political here, but
we'll get to that.
We've all heard the stories,
yeah.
But then you add all the crap that's being taught to these kids in colleges, and you really have to question at certain colleges whether it's worth the money.
Yeah. It's funny because when I was applying for colleges, I applied to University of New Hampshire, New Haven, URI, UMaine, and I think that was it. Those 4 colleges. And there was always, you can get extra money if you're a minority or something like that. And I had friends who were and could get money because of that. And I felt like this is totally unfair. They grew up in the same town I grew up. with great parents, just like how I grew up. And just because I feel discriminated against, and it's the complete opposite of what these people are intending. And it's like, how is this fair? I knew some kids that were minorities and their parents made more money than my parents.
Well,
So why is it
politics isn't fair.
so why is it fair that these kids are getting money and I'm not?
Yeah.
Simply because of the difference of color of skin. So it's almost like reverse racism.
Yeah, it's a form of reparations, right?
Yep.
It is a form of that. And if you're a low income white family versus a low income black family living in Providence, only the one family is going to get the reparations if they ever get to that point. So it's not fair, obviously, just like transgender men pretending to be women. It's not fair that they compete in women's sports. And I'm going to be very outspoken against that as an athlete. It's absolutely unfair. It's absolutely morally wrong. I don't believe any of us should sit around and enable people in their pretend fantasies. I just don't think so. You can call me a bigot, you can call me a racist, you can call me a homophobe, a transphobe, whatever you want, but that's my God-given belief, and I have every right to my beliefs, just like the other person has a right to their belief. Hey, if you want to believe you're a woman, fine, you can believe it. I don't want to stop you if you're an adult. I don't like the idea of forcing kids into that, and not only don't like it, I vehemently object to it. But don't upset the level playing field for everybody else. Do what you want to do, live your life, just like they told us. Hey, what do you care what we do in the privacy of our homes or bedroom? Fine, then stay in the privacy of your homes and bedroom. Why do you have to upset society for the rest of everybody else? I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna comment on that. I'll comment on college, but
okay,
that's for we can talk about that later. But
no,
I'm not gonna comment on that.
I'm sorry for going there.
No, that's okay.
But it is my job. You should know that's what my donors want me to say. Yeah,
absolutely. So. Well, and I think that not perfectly, but transitions us into this next portion of the podcast and to talk about Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity. So if you kind of want to talk about the beginnings of that and how it got started and sort of where the program has gone to this point.
Yeah, and I'll try to keep it non-provocative unless you ask me to go there. So I've always been conservative without knowing it. Ronald Reagan, without knowing what the difference between a Republican or a conservative and a Democrat was, a liberal. I just love Ronald Reagan in the 80s. That's when I was playing ball. I just loved his demeanor and the things he said. And I didn't know I was naive to politics. But when I retired and came back to Cranston, and a good friend of mine, Steve Laffey, became mayor of Cranston, I started to do a little bit, go to some campaign events, meet some people, and eventually it led the way where this opportunity came up to start my think tank in 2010 and 11. And our goal was simple. We firmly believe to this day that what we might call free market or conservative policies are actually in the best interests of most families and all families, especially if we really want increased opportunity, then we need less government and more freedom in our lives. So we were formed to be a research and legislative affairs organization. Our goal was to try to conduct honest and credible research, present it to lawmakers, and hope they would vote the right way, something like that. We didn't do pure, strict lobbying, but we put our information out there and we testified. We didn't go meet with them in their office and offer to support their campaigns if they would do this. So, we didn't do any of that. It was just good, open, public research. But in our state, the truth of it is, we all know it's heavily Democrat, but it's become increasing, just like the whole world, everything's become increasingly polarized and agenda driven, and people were less and less open to research or any other line of reasoning or thinking. And about 2 years ago, we decided there's no hope. Nobody in this state is going to give any consideration to any research we present them or any perspectives we put forth. So we decided, and we're transitioning our company now to become a media company. We decided, let's try to influence public opinion then. So we now so instead of our main website, which was rifreedom.org, we now are putting almost all our effort into oceanstatecurrent.com, which is the media arm of my organization. I have a video blog, just like you've got a show here. I've got a video blog show called In the Dugout with Mike Stenhouse. I use the baseball theme. It's why I wear a cap all the time. And I bring in guests to talk, parents and lawmakers and economic experts and educational experts and children's experts. And we talk about the compelling public policy issues of our time. To show you the polarization, we believe in honest debate. That means respecting and considering both sides of the argument. That's all we've ever asked for. Help. Hey, consider our side of the argument too. But in today's cancel culture, they wouldn't allow our side of the argument to go forward, and we were always, called names, and we were always, canceled or ignored or whatever would happen. And it's still true. I try to invite people with opposing views on my show because I believe in honest debate. I'm not going to we criticize ideas, not people. And most people on the left in the ruling party, I'll call it, won't come on my show. I don't want to debate. I just want to call you a name. I would never come on your show because you're evil, you're Hitler, you're a racist, you're a this, you're a that. I mean, it's bogus, but it's the perfect exemplification of how our society has changed today. So that's all the more. So we have all kinds of content. We have audio, video, posted content. And we're really growing. I think we're the fastest, all digital news source. We're not a full scope news organization, but we focus on the issues that we think are important. And we're really pleased with where we're going. We're just in the beginning stages. So if you talk about entrepreneurship, this is sort of another entrepreneurial. It's not my money we're investing, but I do have some donors are investing in our idea to become a trusted media source in this state that provides a common sense perspective. So that's how we've transitioned just in the last few years, and I'm very excited about where we might be in the next few years.
Interesting. Yeah. If you want to give yourself a plug on your podcast, you can go ahead. If you want to go ahead and give yourself a plug.
Yeah, it's just go to oceanstatecurrent.com. Right at the top, you'll see. I mean, the flagship show, or if you would, of oceanstatecurrent.com is my In the Dugout video podcast, which is featured prominently on the homepage. So just go to oceanstatecurrent.com, look around. You can even subscribe if you want to get notified when live events are happening or other new compelling content is posted. But I do thank you for that, Max. oceanstatecurrent.com.
Yeah, no problem. And so I noticed a lot of times you have a dugout in the background. So is that just some Google image dugout, or is that a dugout? Is that what dugout is that?
Yeah, let me bring it up here for you. I'll switch it.
Yeah.
So no, it's just a picture I found off the internet.
Okay.
Of a dugout. It kind of has the same colors as Fenway Park. It's not a Fenway Park dugout. I have no idea where that dugout is from. But this is the scene, and my In the Dugout show is supposed to be less of a formal interview and interviewee kind of format. It's supposed to be just like I did playing ball. We would sit before the game, before we had to go out for batting practice. Sometimes we get to the park earlier. Sometimes we'd even stay after the game with a beer after we showered, or even before. We go back in the dugout, just sit there, look at the sky, and just talk, just bullshit. Can I say that in your show? We just bull crap about life, girls, booze, not too often politics at that age, but maybe world events. And so I wanted to kind of recreate the same thing. I want to invite people in. I invite all my guests to wear a cap or jersey of their favorite team and join me, just like I have my Packers on right now. And let's just talk politics. Let's just talk public policy issues. So that's the spirit. We have a lot of fun. I'd like to make it even less formal. I'd like some of my opposing view people to come on my show, but we're working on that.
Yeah, definitely. It's I've watched a couple of episodes, and it's pretty interesting stuff. But yeah, so now I guess we could talk a little bit about politics. So it's funny because it's an election year, and I enjoy politics. I like listening to a lot of current things that are going on in the state of Rhode Island and people that are running for office. I had Ashley Kalis on. I had recently on Monday, Caswell Cook's episode is going to be posted. This is being recorded on a Saturday for people listening. Caswell Cook will be posted on Monday the 1st, and then this will be posted on the 10th. On the 10th of October. but yeah, and I had on Blake Philippi. I had on man, I'm drawing a blank here. James Lathrop running for state treasurer. All great people. And I it's just because it's an election year, I think I'm having a lot of political people on. And it, like I said, it's an entrepreneur. This podcast is all about people's life stories, and I like to hear people's who are within the political sphere, their life stories. So that's sort of the explanation of why I'm starting to talk a little bit about politics, but my guests rather are talking about politics. So let's get into a little bit of the nitty gritty about Rhode Island and sort of the current state of politics in the state. So my first question to you is, why do you think there has been a massive shift in how Rhode Islanders vote for governor? I think it's 7 of like the last 12 governors have been Republican. Why all of a sudden has there been this massive shift of a Republican has no shot at winning in this state?
Well, it's not just for governor. It's all statewide offices. It's a lot of local school boards. It's certainly all our federal delegation. Although Alan Fung has a really good chance to change that streak, I think, this year. I have a theory, and it's like we talked about earlier with the media. We first of all, so between when you have every political leadership position in the state, the Speaker of the House, the Senate President, the governor, every other statewide office, and all your entire federal delegation, 2 House members, 2 Senate, and the U.S. Congress, when they're all from one party and they're all apparently committed to the woke left ideology, or at least appeasing of it, and then you have a media that only puts forth their view and criticizes views like mine when I try to, we used to have our reports published all the time. Now the media ignores them. So when only one point of view is largely being presented to the people of Rhode Island, they start believing it. That's the problem we have. That nobody has broken through. We try to do it, but we're a small megaphone compared to what's needed. And I think that's what's happening in our state. They've completely, let's just go use the cancel culture now. They have completely canceled, or at least shut down largely, any other prominent voice against their narrative. And their narratives are increasingly dishonest, not based on the research or science, just like we saw with COVID. I mean, we now know. We were saying it on this show. We've been saying it for 2 years. No, these vaccine mandates and these vaccines don't work the way they're anywhere near the way they're advertised, at least not for most of the population, maybe for seniors. These mask mandates on kids in schools is ridiculous. There's no research to support that. There is none. They've never cited any, other than the CDC says so, but then the CDC never cites any. The government has become expert at lying to us. I'm going to say that flat out. Not that climate change doesn't exist, not that COVID doesn't exist, but the prescriptions they have for it, the urgency and the end of the world attitude that they preach on all this stuff is completely dishonest. But yet there's no prominent voice to refute any of that in our state.
So why do you think that? Sorry to interrupt, but
Yep.
Why? So obviously there's a point where this wasn't the case. Even 10 years ago, this polarity on either side wasn't really a thing. Why do you think it was the liberal side or the Democrats that sort of took? I'm not, whether or not I agree with either side. Why do you think it's the Democrats that are this way and have gotten to this point? Why do you think they're the ones who are in charge of Rhode Island? Why do you think they're the one who are canceling people, quote unquote? Why do you think that's the case?
That's such a great question. And I don't know that there is a national or state or international organizing element to this. I don't know, but they act as if there's one. And here's what I mean by that. And this is a theme I've talked about. Conservatives, our mistake has been up until recently, ignore the cultural issues put out the research, stand on principles, whether it's religious, we're a nation founded on God, or freedom, or a nation, or defend the founding fathers, beat our chests and say, look, we're the ones standing on principle. You should listen to us. And then we go away. And then we don't go to the rallies. We don't do what it takes. We go, I mean, we work, and most of us work, right? We're busy raising families. We're busy working, building careers. The left, on the other hand, has no, they make their arguments, but they are also taking the territory. They are the people in the seats of power. They're the ones getting elected to the school committee, to the town councils, to the general assembly. They're the ones appointed as to head the library, or to head the university, or head this department, or head. They have made it part of their plan, not just to promote their own principles, which I don't think are very principled, but they actually take the territory in the media, right? They're the ones running the media organizations. And we have just sat there saying, well, we're the principled ones, but that's a losing strategy. It might be principled, but it's a losing strategy, is what we've been. Now that's changing. Parents are fighting back. Groups like ours are helping to organize them. Some candidates, are starting to talk the way it is. Like I give an example, the new prime minister in Italy, Giorgia Meloni. Listen to her. Did you ever hear a politician speak like that in Rhode Island? You hear me?
Absolutely not.
You hear me speak like that. Now, whether you agree with her or not,
Yeah,
that is a fact. There is no politician who speaks like that in this state. So until we can get off of this, I don't want to upset the apple cart. I just want to be quiet and stand on principle, go back to my quiet life. Until enough conservatives in this state and freedom-loving patriots, and I say patriots on purpose because you have to love this country. I believe, until enough of us start getting off our duff and quit just thinking, well, we're standing on principle, it's going to continue to be this way in the state. Until we have to start taking back territory, and we'll see if it begins with this election or not.
So do you think that it's been sort of a slow race, or do you think that there was a turning point where it just the polarity instantly turned, and all of a sudden it was just all Democrats, all, people who are left leaning? Do you think that it was a slow race?
I think it's been a slow race. It's been coming for decades. That's one of the reasons I got involved in this 12 years ago, right? Because I could see this coming. I could feel it coming. And
what was the red flag for you? What made you say, oh, I think something like this is going to happen?
Oh, I don't know that there was one thing. It's just the totality of everything, Max. I think I can't point to one thing, but I can remember saying when I first started the center 12 years ago, the term woke wasn't out there at the time, but I used to get invited to speak at Rotaries and all kinds of events. But like I said, even we've been canceled as far as that. I don't get those invitations anymore. Nobody wants to hear the non-narrative, But I used to say 12 years ago, this idea, we used to laugh at these politically correct ideas, what if we're at the dinner table with our family or at the water cooler at work. Look at these crazy ideas. Can you believe people actually think that? Well, and I used to say, but you know what? A lot of these ideas are becoming law now. Governments are actually adopting these, and I don't understand why. So it was that general kind of thing where these foolish ideas that have no basis in science, no basis in research, no basis in economics, no basis in medicine, no basis in common culture or societal norms, all of a sudden start becoming government policy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the trend I saw back then that got me involved, that these absolutely, and it's gotten 10 times worse. I could never have imagined that we'd be talking about men becoming pregnant and men competing in women's sports. I could never have imagined that we're trying to force young kids to chop off their breasts or chop off their sexual parts and take hormones and mutilate themselves at age 12, 13. I could never have thought that would be a politically correct thing, or worse, become law as it is right now in this state. It's illegal it's illegal. Well, I don't want to say illegal, but you would lose your funding and your status. You're not going to get thrown in jail if you're psychologist who tries to talk a youngster out of transition. Can you believe that? That's actually a law in this state, passed a few years ago. So it's really gotten crazy. And for some reason, this craziness still rules the day.
So a lot of people would say that 2016 was the big turning point. Do you believe that?
Trump's election, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, Trump's election really did two things. It clearly fueled the urgency on the left, but I also think I think that a lot of people are recognizing that the left's fanaticism is a house of cards, and I do think the tide is starting to turn back to common sense. People understand, even if they want to believe this woke stuff, I think inside they understand, well, this isn't right. Trump's election, on the other hand, has started to build a new conservative movement in the country. Hasn't taken back enough territory yet, but so the near-term effect has benefited the left, but that's a house of cards. I think the long-term conservative movement that Trump built and is still building to some degree, whether or not he ever runs again, I think will eventually, in the next few years, rule the day. So yeah, you're right that 2016 was a pivotal, with minorities coming over to the Republican Party, with blue collar workers coming over to the Republican Party. It's now flipped. The Democrat Party is now the party of the rich elites and the big corporate cronies. It's all flipped, and the Republican Party is now the party of the average citizen. And it's going to take a few years for that to gain sway, but it's going to happen. Trust me.
So why did that happen? Why did the two parties, quote unquote, completely flip? Because, I mean, when you look back historically, right? Let's go back to the Civil War, the first Republican, Abraham Lincoln. A lot of people don't know that, right? Anti-slavery party, and how come? And it was a lot of rich people, I guess. And Ronald, and then you go forward another 100 years to Ronald Reagan. It's still trickle down economics. It's all about that. And now you jump upwards to now, and Democrats were always historically unions, blue collar people, like you had mentioned. And, now it's completely flipped, like you had just said. Why is that the case? Why did that happen?
Well, I think it flipped because the Democrat Party decided to abandon its base largely. I don't think it's so much that the Republican Party just swooped in to pick up the scraps, because the abandoned their blue collar, common sense base, union base, and starting siding with the elitists, the big companies, who would help them shut down people or back them, and siding with the elitists and these progressives and these, this movement. So they're the ones who have moved, in my view, the Democrat Party, and the Republican Party is just there to pick up the scraps. I don't think the Republican Party, well, the conservative movement has done anything all that earth-shattering, but their benefit from the harsh move left by the Democrats. And so clearly the Democrat Party is the one that has dramatically made the difference. And I think in the end, to their not to their benefit.
Interesting. So I'm young. I'm 21 years old. I grew up in Rhode Island, and I follow both sides of the political island within the state, of the political aisle rather, in the state. And I notice a lot from the Republican Party in terms of sort of the events that they put on. And I remember earlier this year, there was a campaign sort of event, and a couple of Republican candidates were there, and they held it at an old folks home. And it was in Southern Rhode Island. And I'm like, if they want to win, if they want to get elected, if they want their party to prevail, why are they at an old folks home? It was like the only event they had all year. I'm not going to go to that. I'm not saying I agree with them, but if I was interested in politics, I'm a young person who's interested in politics. Why would I want to go to an old folks home event? Like, so my question is there a plan or sort of a game plan for the conservative movement in the state of Rhode Island to try to get back into the swing of things and, become the party in the state?
Well, first, let me say we are not intimately familiar with the workings or strategies of the Republican Party. While many Republican candidates have similar views as I do, and while I know all of those people, we're not part of that.
Okay.
I'm not part of that inner circle. I don't know that it's true that would have been the only event. Senior citizens homes are important when it comes to elections.
Mm-hmm.
It's where the mail ballots come from. We know how important mail ballots have become in this state. I can tell you that I do know that the Republican Party has in this state has because it's not illegal, ballot harvesting and all that kind of stuff. It's not illegal in this state. So, and the Democrats were the only ones doing it. I can tell you that is changing. They are paying people, just like the Democrats are, to go out and collect, and they're going to do it in an honest way, of course, but go out and collect mail ballots. Senior citizens homes are a really big source of voters. They're often your most reliable voters, at least those who are mobile, and mail ballots for those who aren't. They're a very important constituency. So appealing to that base is important. I can tell you what we do. While we don't tie directly to voters or to elections, we have on my staff Larry Gohini, someone you might want to have on. He's a millennial. He's a little older than you. He's in his mid-30s, but he runs a Northeast. He's the head of a Northeast organization called America's Future, who does target millennials and is a Generation Z or X or whatever. What's the one?
Something like that.
Yeah, I don't know my generations too well, but so there is a concerted effort in the conservative movement to reach out to young people. I can tell you that, and my Larry on my staff is heads that effort in the Northeast. Whether that will translate into votes, I don't know. So it's an all of the above. Every constituency is important. Working class people, blue collar people, union personnel. I think we're starting to see that change in this state where union elites are clearly, union bosses are clearly aligned with the Democrats and the left. Many blue collar workers are not. They've like, no, we can't buy this stuff. This is not, we're good, just salt of the earth kind of people, and they are, and we can't go along with this radicals theories that they're pushing around out there, and especially when it comes to our kids. So,
Mhm.
So that's why I say I do believe the tide is turning. I do believe it's peaked. I believe the progressive left, the power of the progressive left in this country and in this state has peaked. How quickly the pendulum will swing back, I don't know. How much the Republican Party in this state is organized in that regard, I don't know. But I can tell you nationally, because my think tank's part of a national association. I have 59 other brothers and sisters in other states throughout the country, think tanks. And I can tell you that we are working in the all of the above approach. And trust me, the tide's going to start turning back.
So would that be a good thing if all of a sudden the country just went completely Republican, completely conservative,
No.
reelected? Okay.
No, we
So-
need balance. I can tell you that
Okay.
my sister think tank, for instance, in South Carolina is as red as Rhode Island is blue, and they have almost identical corruption and insider crony policy as we have here in Rhode Island. So, the old saying is true: absolute power corrupts absolutely. Nobody should have absolute power. No party, no person. We do need balance. I want a good majority of conservatives and Republicans, but we should not have absolute power. No.
Good. Well, all right. Very interesting stuff. I think it's very interesting to hear you talk about, basically the current state of Rhode Island and politics and what's going on. I think we're going to start coming to a close here. And Something I end every podcast with is this question. If you could leave one piece of advice to the listener, whether it's business, politics, or life advice, what would that advice be?
That's easy. Be yourself, stick to your principles, never give up, never back down, never be swayed against what you feel is natural or principled to you. I had my principles. I told you I sacrificed some of those, not politically so much, but, money wasn't the most important thing. My family was. In politics, I believe I am trying to advocate for what I believe. Whether I don't care what people call me, I don't care whether I win or lose. I go to bed at night knowing I'm me. I'm doing what I know is me. I've got 64 years of knowing who I am. There ain't nobody going to change that right now, much of the dismay of many people close to me who think I'm way too stubborn, and I am. But part of that is because I believe so strongly in what I believe. So don't ever question that. But it's not a whim. Standing on principle is not a whim. It's got to be a foundational principle in your life or in your belief system. Too many people think, well, I really believe I can become a woman. Come on, do you really? Do you really believe that? So again, it's got to be a foundational, firm principle. But that's it. Sleeping well at night and having that inner peace is what it's all about. Nothing else matters to me. So to me, it's easy.
Well, I really appreciate that advice, and I appreciate you coming on and telling us all about you and your life story. If you want to give one more plug to your podcast, that's
all right. The podcast is called In the Dugout with Mike Stenhouse, but again, it's featured prominently right on the homepage of oceanstatecurrent.com, where you'll find all other good kind of content. And Max, maybe I'd like to look at you. Maybe we'll have you on as a guest as my show sometime.
I'd love it. So thank you very much for coming on. Thanks everybody for listening, and I will catch you in the next one.